Hi, welcome to the Chad Bozarth Show. Thanks for listening.
Nathan Headley.
Chad Bozarth.
Hey, I am so happy to see you. Do you remember we were in a wedding band together?
Of course I remember. How could I ever forget?
Well, and I think it can legitimately be called a wedding band because I'm sh we did at least two weddings, didn't we?
And that's all we ever did.
But
I
it
mean,
was fan
do you remember, winning Battle of the Bands? Just you and I, like no one else. I played drums, you sang.
Yeah. I- Like, has that ever happened in all of history? Just a singer and a drummer winning something like that?
At least the one time.
That was awesome. You've always been kind of a multi-talented musician.
Yeah.
Like you could just kind of do a little bit of everything. How
I
is
think
that
that's
just come
been
natural? How are you able to do that? Did you take lessons growing up?
uh it was a combination of I did like 3 years of piano lessons and that kind of set the foundation, I think. But even the piano lessons that I took were uh, like classical piano, and I never played classical piano after that because I learned that I could play by ear a lot better. But even now, I mean, 30 something years later, after taking lessons, like I can play multiple instruments, and I am like proficient enough, like let's be honest, to be on a worship team in multiple instruments. But I'm not proficient enough like to be I'm not a good musician in all of these things. Like I can play drums. Drums are that's like I could play drums with people that know what they're doing, but like piano and guitar, I'm probably limited to church worship. But
So we
yeah,
go back to like 1992, I think.
yep.
Um, how is that? What do you remember when Lighthouse Christian Academy started? Were you involved? Like, were you conscious and aware when that, or was that before your time?
No, that was before my time. Yeah, I don't know when it started. I mean, I started, K4 there in 1989. Uh, so I just revealed that I'm 40 this year. 'Cause I was 4 in
Hmm.
1989, but
Welcome.
yeah, welcome.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But yeah, I started K4, so I don't know. I mean, I have no recollection of anything before that.
How was that growing up in that? I mean, because I was a pastor's son too, but it was such a different thing because like you were with the school and the church and what was that like growing up in that environment? Did you feel pressure?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I went to the private school that was housed at the church that my dad was the pastor of. So you mean everyone knew who I was, no matter, I couldn't go anywhere at school or church and not be known as Greg Headley's son. And then my brother, being 2 years older than me, I was his little brother. And then even from like a denominational perspective, my grandfather was a prominent figure in the denomination we were a part of growing up. So like even when we were going to like church conferences and stuff, it was I was Lamar Headley's grandson. So yeah, there was definitely pressure that came with that. Uh, I'm grateful for my parents that they they didn't pressure us to be. I mean, they taught us how to live and stuff and trained us in the way we should go, as the scripture says. But they didn't like they were very like cognizant, I think, of the pressures that other people could place on us that were unnecessary and that weren't authentic. And so they didn't like there wasn't a whole lot of talk of, oh, we can't do this or that because so and so might think this or so and so might say that. So that wasn't a part of the vernacular, which was really good, really healthy, I think, from their perspective, and I appreciated that as I was got older. But I definitely think there was a lot of pressure there as well. And if we're going to dive into like the psychology of it all, I think a lot of the stuff I've dealt with in adulthood, like the performance mindset and feeling like my worth is tied to my performance, I'm sure intrinsically came from a lot of that pressure that I didn't even realize was there. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, I was a good student. I made good grades. I was a good musician. I was good at sports in the bubble, right? In the bubble that we grew up in.
Sure.
Right. So like if I was at like our kids now, they go to a 7A high school, right? And like a
I didn't
couple,
even know 7A existed.
yeah, right. It just keeps getting bigger. It was 5A and then 6A now. So it's like it just keeps getting bigger. And I mean, our kids are good athletes and they play sports, but none of them are playing varsity, like a main varsity sport, like baseball, basketball, football. They play lacrosse, they play golf. And so like if I would have grown up in a school like them, I would not have been as good of an athlete, right? So,
Right.
musician probably. I mean, I think I even saw you interviewed Eric
Yeah.
Gillette for one of these,
Yeah.
right? Like the dude. I mean, it doesn't matter where you go, that guy's gonna be top. I mean, he is top caliber musician. So, I mean,
Yeah.
growing up playing with people like him and Ryan Cannon and like some of the others, like okay, musically, I probably still would have been a good musician wherever I was, but like athlete. But anyways, the point is like, yeah, there's pressure that I think carried into adulthood of and I'm sure we'll get into this, but like I've planted a couple of churches and that no longer exist. Uh, so they that
Mm.
like pressure of having to perform, I think like God has taught me a lot in adulthood about how my worth is not based in whether what I'm doing is quote unquote successful
Mm.
from like a worldly standpoint, that my worth is based in him. But I think a lot of that comes from that pressure. That was the longest answer to the simplest question, but there you go.
No, I'm so happy for that because that's such a tension. Because even yesterday in church, we were talking about, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, so on and so forth. But like Monday morning still comes and I have to still do some stuff. So,
Right.
like the tension of how do I know when I'm doing my best and trusting in myself or doing my best and trusting in the Lord. I struggle with that tension a lot, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um,
Same.
and what does that look for you? Do you think, I mean, we're always still growing, but do you think you're better at that now than you were 20 years ago of not defining your worth based on quote unquote success of whatever you do?
Yeah, I do. Right. I've not arrived. So I don't want to give any impression like, oh, I've got this figured out. Right. But I definitely can see growth in that specific area because of the amount of failure I've experienced uh, the past probably, I'd say, decade.
Mm.
Like, for all intents and purposes, I didn't fail at anything until I was in my 30s. Like,
Mm.
from a sense of did good in school, graduated, did ministry, started a business. All the ministries that I led were quote unquote successful by like church statistical standards, which I have, I don't even know if those are the ones we should place on success, but like attendance and money, like right, the two things that we judge ministries by, like attendance, money, salvations, baptisms. We can count those and quantify them. Like everything was successful and things grew and then moved from one church to the next and things grew there and went from that church to the next and things grew there and financially we're sound and this took place and like there was this upward trajectory of my life and then uh personally good marriage, multiple kids, like first kid, second kid, third kid, so besides like like health challenges, there wasn't a whole lot of failure in my life. uh and then like when the failure started happening, and I say failure, I mean, I'll be honest, they feel like failures to me, and so many counselors and friends and coaches would be like, "Oh, it's not a failure, because you were obedient to the Lord." And I see that, and I agree with that. I don't feel like a failure, but I feel like I've experienced some things that I started or took over or led did not experience the same type of success uh, as I experienced all through my like teens and 20s. And obviously, I don't say like I didn't fail at anything. I mean, obviously, I made tons of mistakes. I'm just saying like from a holistic standpoint, you know, like the youth ministry I led grew. It didn't fail, right? Like the church I led, like it grew and became financially sound and stuff. And when I pastored a church, and so those were successful. And then to like start a church, to plant a church, and uh, experience the ups and downs of that, and then to plant a second church and experience the ups and downs of that, and through both of those, so both the church plants, I'll use those as an example. Both church plants experienced within their first year something completely outside of my leadership control that caused the church to struggle, like drastically struggle. So the church that we planted here in Alabama, the example, I mean, everyone remembers COVID, right? So we
Mm.
planted a church. We started a brand new church in April of 2019. And
Wow, that's perfect
uh,
timing.
perfect timing. And the first year of that, well, not even first year, the first 11 months went great. I mean, just flat out went great. And then COVID happened. And
Mm.
being a church that was not even a full year old and experiencing COVID, we had to shut down. And then in Alabama, we weren't allowed to meet until till May. But the first day we were allowed, like we were back at it that first Sunday that our governor said it was okay. And so, and we go through COVID and we never really recovered as a church. And
Mm.
we have great relationships. So we ended up merging with another church uh, 3 years ago now. So 2022, we merged with another church, and that's gone great. Yeah, the merge has gone really great, and we've experienced a lot of God's faithfulness through it all. But planted a church that doesn't exist anymore, and
Mm.
it was completely outside of my control. And so I want to say I'm a lot better now at attributing my self-worth and value in being obedient to what God is asking me to do. And as a father, as a husband, and as a follower of Jesus, much more than my performance as a pastor, minister, preacher, whatever, musician, like you name it. Uh, because like I've had to reconcile a lot of the um, just reconcile a lot of those emotions of feeling like a failure, knowing that I did the very best I could in the season that we were in, but COVID happened. And yeah, I could go back and second guess, and we should have done this during COVID. We could have done that different. We could have done that different. At the same time, like I'm trying to be the father to 4 kids
Mm.
and a husband to a wife, and then like I was already spending over 40 hours a week trying to get the church going during COVID when people shut in their homes. It's like all the second guessing I could do. What I've come to find out is like, you know what? Maybe I could have done things different or better, and maybe it would have worked out differently. But either way, uh, I did. I worked really hard, and I believe that God blessed me with talents and abilities, and I'm a talented individual who worked hard, who was faithful, who didn't have these major sins that upended like this ministry. So it's like, how can, I had to reconcile all that with my worth can't be placed in the success of this church. And God doesn't love me more if the church grows and I'm not, uh, I'm not a low valued person or how, I don't know how to put that, but like my worth and my value is not in my performance. And I'm sure a lot of that comes from years of being a high performer and the pressure that I felt as a child to constantly perform. Uh, and not blaming anyone for that. Like I had great parents, wonderful parents who loved me, did the best they could, and were awesome. They were great parents. So I'm not blaming them. There's probably a lot of just internal drive and environment I was in. But yeah, I think I'm a lot better at it now for sure. I know I am, because if if we rewound the clock 10 years and Nathan Headley was 10 years younger, but working a full-time job that was not in ministry, being like a super part-time pastor, I would look and say I failed. Like I would look and say I wouldn't be content. I wouldn't be fulfilled. I would be depressed and upset. And this is so like the next thing I want to say, it's like going to reveal like part of, where I was at. So let's say 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I was a youth pastor at a church, well over 1,000 people, large church. Now, oh, and then I pastored a church, and then we pastored a church with a few hundred people. Started a couple of churches that were both, reached a couple hundred people at different times. And now, like, I'm a part-time adult discipleship pastor at a church smaller than any of the churches I had ever been a part of until I was 30. Well, probably until I was 31, 32. And there was all through my 20s, I would have looked at that. I would have looked down on, not I would have, I looked down on people who pastored small churches. And that was wrong and sinful of me, but I did. But I placed my worth in my ability to lead at a successful, quote unquote, worldly successful mega church type level. And like here I am so many years later and not even involved in that environment in a much smaller church, and seeing God's faithfulness and God's doing amazing things, and also come to realize like, man, big church, small church, that's not what determines success. But so yeah, I think I'm a lot better at it because I'm 10 years ago, I wouldn't even, I'll give you one, 12 years ago, I wouldn't even be where I am right now. I would have just found another ministry job. Like I just would have said, like, I'm not going to go in the corporate world. I'll find another ministry job. I got a big enough resume. I got contacts. I'll just go find something else. But then to say like, no, my family comes first. My family needs to stay here. I'll go find a job in the quote unquote regular world and do that for a while. But anyways.
Man, that's so good. Do you ever think, and maybe you haven't thought this, but I remember thinking, I don't know, 20 whatever years ago, thinking about success in ministry, like, if you're in the sports world, right, there's all of these athletes that we can kind of look to and think, oh, I want to be like this person, right? And model my game after whoever it is, right?
Right.
Or in acting, I want to be like Denzel or whatever, whoever the actor is. It's like there's these people that embody the top performer of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
But ministry isn't really like that.
Oh, I think it is. And
You think it is?
I think it's part of the problem. Like in Western culture, I definitely think it is. And I think that's a big part of what shaped a lot of my 30s was the guys that I did that with. Okay. So the Michael Jordans,
Like the mega church pastor
the
that had
mega
written
church
10
pastor
books.
that had written 10 books, all of a sudden it comes out the dude's having multiple affairs. Or it comes out like he's embezzling money, or he's an alcoholic, or whatever, and he ends up having to leave that environment, or he was overbearing leader, or whatever. These things, and it's like, oh shoot, like these people that I'm looking up to, that I'm trying to not looking up to, that I'm trying to emulate, right? I'm trying to copy their pitching motion. I'm trying to copy their free throw shot, whatever, from a sports analogy. I'm trying to emulate their performance, and they begin to morally fail. It's like, oh, shoot, I don't want to do that. So I got the wrong quote unquote hero. But I think we do that in ministry. I think we look at we we elevate the most I want to say most talented, but maybe not even the most talented is the word. We elevate someone's skill set and gift above character. And then I think we elevate the size of one's church, or how many books they've written or whatever. And we hold them up as they're the celebrity, they're the hero. And then in church world, we have a bunch of people that are trying to be like them. I do think that exists in church, and I think it's a problem.
Man, how so how can we disseminate and change what we teach about what success is in ministry? Like, what is success in ministry? You've kind of talked about it already, but how can we do better um, at not building people up so much? I don't know how to ask that question.
Yeah, I don't think I'm qualified to answer that. Like I have so many thoughts, right? Like so many. I'm an opinionated person, and I could share like my thoughts, but like I just don't think realistically I'm qualified to answer that. I can share from experience, being a church planter and going to like church planting conferences. The people that the church planting conferences bring on stage are the ones, they're the exceptions. Like they're the ones that it's like, oh,
Mm,
this guy started his church and within 200, within 2 months or within 1 year, within 18 months, like they were 500, 600 people and 200 salvations or whatever. It's like we're highlighting. It's like, okay, well, there was 20 other churches planted during the same period that 2 years in have very little to show for it, but maybe 10, 15 years in, they're going to have a lot to show for it. Like, I don't know. It's like we highlight, I mean, I go to that conference and I would see all that. And then like, okay, well, I'm 3 months in or 5 months in, and we only have 100 or 50 or 200, whatever, like pick a number under
mm,
500. And you're like, oh, he's succeeding and I'm failing.
mm.
When it's like, well, maybe God has specifically called me to reach these people, and this is what we're supposed to be at right now. Like I don't know how we redefine it. I mean, I think we have a celebrity culture in Western Christianity that is wrong, but I don't know how to fix it.
How do you said 12 years ago or whatever, if you were in a similar position that you are in now or have been in, you would have just found another ministry job. How do you personally determine, um, I guess, how do you determine what you believe to be the will of God for your life is on any given big decision? Is that an easy question?
Uh, no easy questions today. We just jumped right in, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Well,
is so good, man. I honestly, I've been looking forward to talking to you because you do have so much experience and so much wisdom. And it's like we grew up together, went to Bible college together, but in so many ways, you're like ahead of me with like life on different things.
I don't know about
Um,
that.
well, like kids ages, for example. Um,
Yeah. I
and
think yeah, I did everything early and fast.
yeah, yeah.
And there's probably Sure, yeah, there's probably lessons I learned faster than others because I had to. but there's probably also a lot of pain I've experienced that I was unnecessary because we did things so fast. Okay, but let's get back to the question. How do I discern the will of God? Oh man, like it's such a hard uh question to answer because I think it's looked very differently in different seasons of life, in different like spots. Uh I think so I grew up in a Pentecostal environment. You did too. And I think for a long time in that environment, it was like this I mean, maybe even spoken, but almost unspoken deal that like there's this pathway for you that God has designed and called you to do this specific thing in this way, and you better not miss it. And
Mm.
so there was like, pray real hard and wait on the Lord, and which I agree with praying real hard. I agree with waiting on the Lord. But there was almost like this, like God's gonna to speak to you clearly, and He's gonna show you what the direction is. And so, uh, yeah, there's a bunch of others that would just not go anywhere because they would like wait on hearing the Lord. And if they didn't hear the Lord, they wouldn't do anything. But a professor in college once said, God can't move a parked car, so you should
Yeah.
get out of park and start driving. And that professor's name was Susan Bozarth. Uh,
That's a
and
good word.
we both know well. Oh, dude, Chad, like, okay, just a little aside. Your parents, man, they influenced my life so much. Your dad, uh, he taught one of my I think it was Acts of the Apostles, one of the first classes I took, with first semester of Bible college. And the first day, he starts talking about how he listened on the radio to some like Methodist pastor or whatever on the way in. And he was just like really encouraging us to learn from anyone. And that like there's so many people that are following Jesus that love the Lord that have all kinds of wisdom. And if they're not in the denomination you grew up in, if they have slightly different theological beliefs, doesn't mean like they're not wise. And he talked about this Methodist guy like he listened to and how he learned from them. And I've remembered that my entire life because I grew up in this Pentecostal denominational environment, and to hear him say that was like freeing of like, yeah, like there's not one denomination that has everything right. There's not one group that's perfect and everyone else is off. It's like we're all a little off. Like nobody has 100% correct. But man, if there are people following Jesus and they are uh, they are a little different than you, that doesn't mean you can't learn from them. Like you can learn from anyone. So like your mom and
Mm.
dad like had a big influence on my life. But even when it comes to like let's say the will of God, I referenced your mom, like, you can't move a parked car. She talked about like get up and do something. I think at different times in life it's been, all right, I'm gonna go in this direction. And then if I if I feel strongly like through prayer or through circumstances that God is redirecting me, I'm gonna be open and listen to that. I'm not gonna be so stubborn that I made a decision. There's other times where like I would wait and not make a decision and kind of even do like a Gideon style fleece, not like not like a weird thing and not like a true fleece, but almost we were praying about going to one church, and I just been praying like, okay, Lord, I feel a peace about it. I think this is probably where we should go, and just reveal it like in multiple different ways, like make it clear. And then some things would happen that seemed to make it clear. Uh, and then I think personally, like at the same time, uh, I think that I hesitate to say this because I don't want it to come across like for people that are looking to hear the voice of the Lord and like follow His will. I don't want it to come across as like downplaying uh, the prompting of the Holy Spirit or anything like that. But I think I just cared way too much about this aha moment. And the older I got, and um, the more factors that come into play with kids and family and all that, there becomes a practical side that I think I uh, naively and altruistically ignored the practical side and was like, if God's calling us all the way across the country, then everything's going to work out, you know? And then like you have kids and they're in school and you're like, wait, maybe, okay, yeah, if God does it, yes, it'll work out. But maybe my own sense of adventure and my own sense of discontent in a lot of ways, and like my own sense of like I'm a builder, like I just know I am. I like to build things, I like to create, I like to build. I don't like to maintain. So maybe being a lead pastor wasn't the best role for me in the first place because I'm not big at maintaining. I'm not big at maintenance. I love to create and do new things. So maybe my own sense of like wanting to create an adventure would lead me to emotionally contrive that the Holy Spirit is leading me in a certain thing because it sounds dangerous and it sounds
Mm,
exciting, but it might not be best for my family. And so as I got
mm,
older, discerning the will of the Lord became like, okay, is this is this the right thing for our family? And does my wife have peace about it? Do I have peace about it? Is it gonna is it gonna be peaceful? Because not everything's gonna be safe, but is it do
right.
I feel a
Mm,
peace about the danger?
mm,
Uh, and then honestly, when we moved to Alabama, we just made a decision. We got advice from a very seasoned pastor, and I was talking to him about, you know, what we were doing, where we were going to go, and we knew we were moving on uh, from California at the time, and I was kind of praying about what to do next and where to go, and he just said, you know what, Nathan, God said, go into all the world, and so if you're on planet Earth, you're probably okay. And I was like, wait, what? There's not like this perfect
mm,
location that I'm supposed to, like, God's going to reveal in some miraculous way. And he's like, as long as you're on planet Earth and like you're preaching the gospel, you're
mm,
probably going to be all right. And so when we were leaving there, we just made a decision like, wherever we go, whatever happens, we're going to stay there at least for 7 years because
mm,
our daughter was entering middle school. We had moved her around quite a bit through elementary school, you know, uh, from one ministry position to the next. And it was like, we're gonna put we're gonna put our kids' stability first because we felt that our kids needed long-term stability. We felt like our family needed some long-term stability. So it was like, wherever we go, we're gonna spend at least 7 years there so she can graduate high school and go into college. So discerning the will of God for our life became like it looked totally different whenever we felt a peace about that decision because then it didn't become like where should we go and what should we do. It's like we're going to go here and we're going to do this, and if that doesn't work out, God's going to lead us to do something else, but we're not going to go anywhere else.
mm,
And so, and I absolutely feel like that was the Lord leading us. uh I mean, another friend of mine said like just follow the provision of the Lord. I always felt like that was a good advice. Like if God's providing in some way, whether it be, monetarily, or if it's through a job or food, whatever. If God is, if he's miraculously, in a seemingly miraculous way, or at least in a divine way, or in a like outside of normal way, if he's providing, like follow the provision of the Lord. And I felt like that was
mm,
really good advice. Uh, and whenever we were like, I was pastoring a church, the church plant. It was during COVID. I'm working this other job. I had a couple job opportunities present themselves in the regular world that were huge pay increases, like massive pay increases. And I would pray about those because at the time I had an income from church and an income from outside. And like we were doing fine as a family, and it was like I don't need the pay increase. But it was one of those like as I pray about it, I just kept hearing that like follow the provision of the Lord. And so I took the job, and then took the next, like I took a promotion. All the while, like I had no idea that the church we had planted was eventually going to merge with another church. And when we merged with the other church, like I mean, they do, yeah, I get a little, I got a little side job at the church, basically, there's a little bit of income that's there. but it didn't replace by any means like what I brought in pastoring the church. But thankfully, like God had brought us to a place, brought me to a place in my regular job where I didn't need any income from the church to live. So like I was afforded options whenever it was time to merge our church with another one. Like I had options. I didn't have to go like, oh, I'm going to go merge with the church that's going to hire me on staff, or I'm going to go be a pastor here. Or I'm going to go do this. Like I didn't have to go look for another job. Like God had provided already for that next step. So whenever it was time to merge, it was like, what's the best fit for our church people? What's the best fit for our family, church family, personal family over the next few years, because we're still not moving, like we're still not leaving this area. And so God had provided. Uh, so, discerning the will of the Lord, lots of prayer, lots of reading the Bible. Personally, I read the Bible. If I'm discerning the will for the Lord, like for my life, I'm diving into the word way more than normal. Like I'm not doing my normal devotions. It's like I am reading like just chapter after chapter. I'm reading because I'm a very emotional person. I'm high on emotion. And so uh I can like I'm high on emotion, but also like very uh like I think through things. So I think a lot of thoughts. I'm a very deep thinker. And so just praying and trying to hear the voice of the God or hear the voice of the Lord for my future, it is like overwhelming to me. And it comes to a point where like I honestly I just can't trust it. I can't trust that when I'm praying, I can't trust that I'm hearing the Lord and not my own emotion. But when I'm reading the word and I'm really diving into scripture is when I feel like God speaks to me uh much clearer through that. And then also I, listen to a bunch of other people.
Mm,
I get advice, but I think that's
mm,
for me a lot of the different ways I've tried to follow, the will of God for my life. But uh, I don't think I've gotten it right all the time. Let me take that back. That sounds so like that's so soft, too soft. I know I haven't gotten it right. I know I've made mistakes. Now I can't like necessarily pinpoint moving from Colorado to Oregon was a mistake. Like I can't pinpoint that was a mistake. I can't pinpoint that like moving from Oregon to California was a mistake, but I know that I've made some other mistakes. Like when I've tried things like we were pastoring at church and I felt, oh man, I was praying and praying and praying and praying and praying and praying and praying. Like, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? And I made a decision. Here's what we're gonna do. Oh, it was so stupid. We shouldn't have done it. And it was just like, shoot, like I thought I could have sworn like God told me to do this, and it didn't work out. I was like, obviously it wasn't God. That was just Nathan. But those are learning moments for me of like, oh, I can't trust my emotion. I can't trust my thinking to be clear when I'm stressed. I can't trust my thinking to be clear when I'm high emotion. I can't trust my thinking to be clear just in prayer. I need scripture and I need other people.
mm. Man, Nathan, that's so good. Dude, we're gonna have to do this some more because there's just so much stuff I want to ask you. Thank you so much for uh, being open and honest and sharing all this. Yeah, I think wow, what you said was so good. I mean, that's how I felt like with my parents were in ministry, but literally, I'm not just saying this. I always felt like they put me first. Like
Yeah.
I always felt that, you know? And so you and I were in Bible college a little over 20 years ago together. What would you say as we wrap up? What would you have some years in ministry behind you now. What would you say to somebody that's kind of on the front end of their journey into ministry?
Hmm. I think I would say, okay, I want to be encouraging because like I'm naturally an encouraging person and I want to be positive. So I think like I think that we as a Christian culture especially in more charismatic Pentecostal circles, have we have inappropriately elevated full-time ministry to a place of we've elevated it to like the best of the best do this, and like these are the ones who are true followers of Christians, whatever. And I think that's totally a farce. Uh, and I think that because we've done that, there are probably people that are starting out that think they have to be in quote unquote full-time ministry to follow the will of God for their life because we've preached to them for so long that this is the highest calling. And I don't think it's the highest calling. I think it's a calling. I think that the highest calling is being a follower of Jesus and leading other people to know Jesus. But you don't have to be in full-time or part-time ministry to do that. And maybe even you can do it better if you're not. But if you are, you do specifically feel the pull, the call, of God to do ministry. I think my advice would be like enjoy every season that you're in because you never know when that season is going to end for better or for worse.
Mhm.
And looking back on it, I wish I would have stopped and smelled the road. Like I sound like such an old man, but like
No, I
not
feel
even
the
that
same
old.
way,
It's like,
man. Oh my gosh. I was so just, what's the next thing? Next thing, next
yeah,
thing. Oh man, that's the trap is to be so worried about the past and anxious about the future that you miss like the rows in front of you, man. You like
yeah.
I'm almost crying over here, man.
And the other thing I would say, real quick, I would say is just never forget that ministry is about people, and every single person is valuable to God because so many times ministry can become about properties, can become about, buildings, can become about money, can become about attendance, can become about the statistics, but like it's about people. And so if you're in it for the money, the statistics, or, the prestige, you're in for a rude awakening at some point in time. Because I was, I experienced the rude awakening because I think that I unknowingly was in it for the prestige for a while. And there's a rude awakening that comes with that. And thankfully, like, wasn't like a moral or a sin issue or anything like that. But there's a rude awakening in my own time with the Lord. Just spending time with him and the amount of lessons he had to teach me because I would do and say things from a quote unquote leadership standpoint that then I would go into prayer and just feel the Holy Spirit convict me like that was not the right way to handle that person, that individual, that thing, or not that thing, that person, like that individual, that experience. Like I didn't value the individual uh, the way I should have, but I don't know. I think it's a ride, it's a journey. Ministry also too, like it's amazing, like it's fun, it's exciting, it's there's all kinds of blessings through it. Like I could go through like miracle after miracle that God's provided, that God's just like shown up out of nowhere and done stuff for us. Very recently, uh, it's supposed to be anonymous, so I'm not going to share like too many details, and I highly doubt people in my current sphere will ever find out that I'm doing this with you. Uh, but like even recently, like God gave one of my kids a car for free.
Wow.
And it's just like, what? And so there's these kind of like things that like God just shows up and provides. And you see that in ministry a lot. You see it outside ministry too, but those are going into ministry. You'll see God show up in ways you never thought He would, you never anticipated, and it'll be exciting. It'll be great. I had a professor, or he was a guy. He was actually a guy in our church in Oregon, but he was also the professor at a local Bible college in Portland, Salem, Oregon area. And we would sit and we would talk about like the Old Testament and the inheritance that was passed down from generation to generation, and how like there was a generational wealth that was compiled by a lot of the Israelite leaders that they passed down. But anyways, he talked about how the Levites the Levites' inheritance is that they get to be in the presence of the Lord.
Hmm.
And that he, as modern day ministers, our inheritance a lot of times isn't monetary, isn't property. It's that we just get to be in the presence of God.
Hmm.
And I would say the biggest difference I've experienced in being in full-time ministry versus part-time ministry is in full-time ministry, I enjoyed longer periods in the presence of God than I'm afforded now with having to work, not having to work, I love my outside job. I love it. Not to mention I enjoy it. I get to work with people that I enjoy, that, I get to be, uh, an example. Not, I don't want to say example, like I'm some better person. Like I get to show the love of Jesus to people I would never be able to if I was just in full-time ministry, because I'm in the workforce and I do love that job. But I got to dedicate 40, 50, 60 hours to that job. So that limits the 2 and 3 hour times I could just go in the prayer room when I was in full-time ministry. But I think treasure those moments, treasure every moment, treasure the times you get to spend in the presence of God. And thankfully, I was able to, I learned some of that lesson. And so like in my early and mid 30s, I felt like I was really able to cherish those times with the Lord, and even look back so fondly of just like the hour or two I'd be able to just spend in the presence of God that were wonderful. And even though now I don't get to do it as often or as long, uh, it's still a part of the inheritance of those that dedicate their lives to ministry.
Hmm. Nathan, I'm proud of you, man. Thank you so much. I love you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I wish we could hang out more. I wish we get to see each other more. It's just good seeing your face.
You too, man. Thank you.